Yes, well, if we go to the most important passage probably in the Scriptures with regard to this matter, it'd be Romans chapter 3. And we read there in verse 23, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Now, there are so many people who can quote that text, but it really doesn't shake them up. They'll say, yeah, everybody's a sinner. I know I'm a sinner. I shouldn't be a sinner. They may even smile about it. What's the problem? The problem is not that men don't know they're sinners. They know they're sinners. The problem is they don't know who God is. And one of the chief aspects of preaching the gospel is communicating to men who God is, the attributes of God. Let me give you an example. A mafioso is arrested for murder and embezzlement and everything else. He's finally arrested. He's in jail. But he's smiling and laughing and having a good time. It's the day he's to appear in court to be sentenced. He's happy and whistling and everything else. He doesn't have a problem in the world. Why? He's paid off the judge. He's paid off a corrupt judge. And so he knows when he walks in that room, he's going to be set free. He knows he's committed all the crimes, but he knows that the judge is just as corrupt as he is. So he's not worried about it at all. But imagine what happens when he walks in that courtroom and finds out that that corrupt judge has been replaced with the most righteous and severe judge in all of Italy or Sicily. All of a sudden, everything changes. His peace turns to turmoil. His laughter turns to tears. His confidence turns to fear. Why? Because he now sees a righteous judge sitting on that throne. It's the same way today. Most preachers do not tell you who God is. They do not give you a biblical presentation of a God who loves righteousness and therefore hates evil and will come against evil with an indescribable fury. He cannot be bribed. He cannot be tempted. As Adam and Eve sinned only one time and were both cast out of the presence of God and the entire world was turned over to corruption. And yet you sit there, how many times have you sinned before God? More times than you can count on a calculator. And yet you may laugh when someone says you're a sinner. If you can, it's because you don't know who this God is. So many people will say, God is love, therefore He can't hate. But the Bible teaches that God is love, therefore He does hate. You see, if you love all that is righteous, you must hate all that is evil. If you love Jews, you must hate the Nazi Holocaust. You can't be neutral about it. If you love African Americans, you cannot be neutral about slavery. You must hate it. If you love children, you must hate abortion. God loves righteousness. He hates sin, and He will come against it with a fury that this world could not even begin to describe. So when people hear that they've sinned, it doesn't bother them because there's so few preachers are actually preaching about who God is. You see. And we see here in chapter 3, especially beginning in verse 9, Paul goes through using Old Testament text after Old Testament text to do what? To prove to the entire world that they have sinned against a holy God and they are condemned. Paul's purpose of doing that is to condemn people. I've heard so many preachers say, I'm not up here to condemn you. But Paul, actually, his purpose in the first verses of Romans 3 is to condemn the whole world. Look what he says. Verse 19. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. We must teach men who God is. Teach men how they have violated His law, so that men will have a sense of utter condemnation and utter helplessness. They cannot save themselves. They cannot be saved through some turning over of the leaf and a new life. They can't be saved through going to church. They can't be saved through religion. They can't be saved through baptism or just being nice to people. We're sinners. And there's only one who has the power to save, and that is God. Now that presents a great problem, you see. And here's the problem. The greatest problem in all the Bible is this. If God is just, He cannot forgive you. If God is truly righteous and just and good, He cannot forgive you. That's what the whole Bible is about. Let me give you an example. If someone murdered your entire family and you caught them red-handed, you turned them over to the police turned them over to the judge, and then the judge looked at that person and said, I'm compassionate, full of loving kindness and abounding in mercy. I pardon you for all your crimes. And then you watch as the murderer of your entire family and the judge walk out of the courtroom to have a fine meal together. Are you going to say to yourself, what a wonderful judge? What a loving judge? No, you're going to say that the judge is corrupt. Because the responsibility of a righteous judge is to measure out punishment according to the crime. The wages of sin is death, eternal separation from God. The question in the Bible is, how can God pardon men and at the same time maintain His righteousness? I've heard people say, instead of being just with us, God was loving with us. Well, that means God's love is unjust. God is perfect in all His attributes. He cannot love at the expense of His justice. He is justice. He is love. Those exist in harmony in Him. So God is not going to love the sinner at the expense of His justice. God's justice makes demands upon the sinner, and that justice must be satisfied. The law commands that you live a perfect life before God. You have not done that. You have no righteousness. The law commands that those who do not live a perfect life before God should be condemned. You and I should be condemned. And the question is, how can God save mankind and still be just? And the answer is found in the cross of Christ, in the person